Hello and a very warm welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching a brand new edition of World Panorama with me, Frank Pereira. For the next half an hour, we'll bring you a roundup of all the significant events to have happened around the world this week. But first, a look at the headlines. Prime Minister Modi to conclude his 6-day visit to 4 European nations shortly. The Prime Minister began his tour on Monday with a visit to Germany, followed by Spain, Russia and now France. Trump announces withdrawal from Paris Climate Agreement, says deal favors China and India. US's decision met with widespread international condemnation. The UN chief Antonio Guterres calls it a major disappointment. Deadly blast in Kabul kills 90 and injures over 400. Afghanistan blames Pakistan for deadly suicide attacks, says that the blast was carried out by the Haqqani network with direct help of the ISI. North Korea fires yet another missile, this time into Japanese waters. Tokyo protests strongly and condemns the launch, but confirms there was no damage. Our top focus on the program this week. Prime Minister Modi is on the last leg of his Europe tour. The Prime Minister began his 6-day trip with a visit to Germany on Monday, where he held talks with the Chancellor Angela Merkel. Modi then visited Spain, where the two countries signed 7 MOUs. On the third leg of his week-long visit, Modi was in Russia, where he held summit-level talks with Vladimir Putin and signed 5 agreements there. The Prime Minister is now in France and will end his tour shortly.
There is huge potential in India-Germany economic collaboration. Our economic partnership is still below its full potential. To enhance this, we in India are ready with open arms to welcome German companies.
We believe that with the deep amalgamation of international value-added chains, it is necessary to be open and to create fair trading conditions, and that is why it is important to us that we progress with the German-Indian, or better said, the EU-Indian trade deal.
During our conversation, we noted successful cooperation in the field of peaceful atom. As is known, the first unit of the Kudankulam nuclear plant was put into operation, the construction of which used the most modern and reliable Russian technologies. Before the end of the year, I'll go to India, so that together we may welcome the first summit of International Solar Alliance, which gathers several countries and is a concrete, efficient instrument in the fight against global warming. It will enable our two countries to make tangible commitments in favor of solar power.
And joining me for a chat this week to talk about the Prime Minister's Europe tour is former diplomat ASHOK SAJJANHAR. Ambassador, thank you for joining me on the program. So what are the main takeaways as far as the Prime Minister's European tour is concerned?
You know, I think we could say that with all the different countries, there are different takeaways, and I'll be happy to share them. But I think there has been one or a few themes that are common as far as all the visits are concerned. I think first is I'd like to focus on trade and investment, because I think that is what Prime Minister Modi, wherever he has gone, he has tried to reach out to the leadership of those countries and also to the business community. Like when he went to Germany, that was, you know, whether it was education, it was Skill India, it was Make in India, it was Digital India. Across the board, you know, these are the sort of, and he was inviting capital, he was inviting investment. Similarly, as far as Spain is concerned, Spain, of course, there's been no visit for the last 30 years, and Russia and France also. The other aspects, and you know, in all these, also when he was speaking at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, basically he was telling them why India is such an excellent destination for investment, what India has been able to do in terms of new laws, rules, and why these countries should come to India, invest and have better trade and economic relations. The second big, huge takeaway, I think, is in terms of collaboration on counterterrorism, because terrorism is an area that really binds all of us together. All of us are afflicted by terrorism, whether it was Germany, Berlin had happened there some time ago. If when he was in Germany, then Kabul happened. In Europe, Manchester has happened just recently. And of course, France has been afflicted. Spain has been afflicted. Russia, we saw on the 3rd of April, we had the St. Petersburg metro bombing there. So all these countries have been afflicted with terrorism. So how can the international community work together? And this is the message also that he shared. There are no good terrorists, no bad terrorists. Yesterday, in the presence of Antonio Guterres in St. Petersburg, he said there is a convention that has been waiting for the last 40 years, and we have not been able to define terrorism. And the third major takeaway I would mention is that there is so much change that is taking place in the world, so much of uncertainty. First, if you look at Mr. Trump, you know, whether it is the Paris Accord.
I was just going to come to that. You know,
okay.
When all of this was happening, you mentioned the attacks around the world, but another major thing that is going to affect the world is Trump backing out of the Paris climate deal. And India has, you know, reconfirmed or reaffirmed and said that, you know, we are not backing out. We are going to ensure that we do our part.
That's right. And I think this is not the only thing, you know. This is the latest. It was expected. This was one of his campaign promises. So I think everyone is deeply disappointed, but I think they could see the writing on the wall. But then just before that also, he had gone and participated in G7. He had participated in NATO. And the sort of message that Mr. Trump was able to give, whether it was in terms of trade, protectionism, that, you know, he criticized Merkel on her face, you know, in terms of exporting cars to the United States by manufacturing them in Mexico and so on and so forth.
You know, that also laid the ground really for Prime Minister Modi, and then the subsequent visit of Li Keqiang to Germany, you know, to go there and try and sort out these things and, you know, look at the world differently, because Germany and the United States are strong allies, but Merkel doesn't seem to, you know, think the same these days.
Yeah, United States and, you know, the transatlantic partnership. I think it is all Donald Trump's doing, because he has fractured that transatlantic partnership, and that is what Angela Merkel said, that we cannot depend, we cannot rely on our earlier relationship as much as we used to.
So is Europe going to look towards Asia now?
Absolutely. I think this movement did start because, you know, Asia, the center of activity, of economic growth, from the West, it was coming to Asia in any case. But Frank, I would like to sort of, you know, just differentiate between Prime Minister Modi's visit and Li Keqiang's visit.
Yes.
Because I think there is wariness as far as China's rise is concerned. There is discomfort, you know, as far as the Belt Road Forum that was organized by Xi Jinping in Beijing on the 14th and 15th. And although there was a representation from European Union and also from Germany, but they refused to sign on the trade document because, you know, they said that it is all China-centric.
Right.
It is, there is no provisions for transparency, for sustainability, for environmental protection. So there are a large number of problems as far as China is concerned. Of course, China-Germany trade is about 10 times as much as it is as far as India is concerned. But I think India, there is a much greater comfort level as far as India is concerned. So I think the fact that Prime Minister Modi was there, of course, the visit has been planned earlier, not keeping in view what Mr. Trump is going to do there.
Indeed.
But the fact that he was there and the fact that he took the decision also to go to France to make contact with the new president, so that our relationship, which is strong, which is strategic, that can be taken forward.
There's so much to talk about, Ambassador, but we have so little time, so we'll have to call it a wrap on our chat at that. Thank you so much for joining us on the program and putting things into perspective for us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, moving on now, of course, 90 people were killed and nearly 463 injured in a suicide attack in Kabul on Wednesday. The area where the explosion took place was close to the presidential palace and several foreign embassies, including India's. However, External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj confirmed that the Indian officials were unhurt. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, President Pranab Mukherjee and Vice President Hamid Ansari condemned the attack. So did world leaders. Here's a report.
"90 civilians, including foreign nationals employed at various embassies, were killed in an earthquake-like massive explosion which ripped through Kabul's high-security diplomatic enclave during morning rush hour on Wednesday. The blast caused by a truck bomb struck close to the German embassy in Zanbach Square, injuring at least 463 people. The explosion was so powerful that it damaged windows and doors hundreds of meters from the blast area.
It was really powerful and our shop was totally damaged. I've never seen such a terrible explosion in my life. After the blast, we hurried downstairs and saw all the things damaged. Many buildings were badly destroyed. I collapsed under the desk and received injuries from shattered windows. Many of my colleagues were also wounded. I was at my desk when I heard a terrible sound and became unconscious. My shoulder is injured. It was dreadful.
No group has so far claimed responsibility, but officials say it was triggered by 1,500 kilograms of explosives hidden inside a sewage tanker. German Chancellor Angela Merkel expressed horror.
We all stand today impacted by the devastating and murderous bomb attack in the immediate vicinity of German embassy in Kabul. My thoughts and sympathies go out to the victims of this attack and their families. In moments like these, it is once again clear to us that terrorism knows no boundaries. It targets us all, whether in Manchester or Berlin, Paris, Istanbul, St. Petersburg or Kabul.
The bomb went off 100 meters from the Indian embassy, causing damage to the building. However, the External Affairs Ministry confirmed that all officials working in the embassy were safe. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, President Pranab Mukherjee and Vice President Mohammad Hamid Ansari condemned the attack. The President said this kind of senseless violence cannot be justified under any circumstance. The Vice President called it a crime against humanity. China, France and Turkey also said that their embassy personnel had not been hurt.
China strongly condemns this terrorist attack. We express our condolences to the injured and the families of the dead. China opposes all forms of terrorism and is willing to work with Afghanistan and the international community together to strike against terrorism. According to our understanding, the explosion led to our embassy suffering a certain degree of damage. Fortunately, all of the embassy employees are safe and sound.
Our embassy building is neighboring other embassies and it was damaged in the blast, but thankfully nobody is wounded. We are thinking of evacuating part of our staff from the building as the embassy building needs to be repaired.
Afghan President Ashraf Ghani termed the bombing a war crime, while Afghanistan's intelligence agency blamed the Taliban-allied Haqqani network for the attack. Meanwhile, lights were switched off at Paris's Eiffel Tower just before midnight in honor of the victims. As per reports, the blast at the start of the holy month of Ramadan was the deadliest attack in Kabul since 2001. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, it's time for a short break now, but still to come, there has been widespread international condemnation of President Trump's announcement that the US is withdrawing from the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. Trump said he was prepared to negotiate a new agreement or re-enter the accord on improved terms, but world leaders were not impressed. That and much more on the other side. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
This is Kibutu in Arunachal Pradesh, East Point East on the map of India. Kibutu is dangerously close to the Chinese pressure point. We see first-hand and unseen areas of sand dunes and see how BSF is guarding this difficult territory along the Indo-Pak borderline. We are now slowly entering into the interior-most parts of the Sir Creek area. Indo-Tibetan Border Police Force justifies each word of this thing. Watch super exclusive episodes of National Security Series only on Rajya Sabha television.
Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha television. Well, there was widespread international condemnation of President Trump's announcement of the US withdrawing from the Paris Climate Agreement on Friday. UN Chief Antonio Guterres called it a major disappointment, while the European Union called it a sad day for the world. Trump said that the accord punished the US and will cost millions of American jobs.
Donald Trump on Thursday confirmed that the U.S. will quit the Paris Climate Agreement. The U.S. president described the accord as a deal disadvantageous to the U.S. and one that harmed American jobs.
In order to fulfill my solemn duty to protect America and its citizens, the United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord, but begin negotiations to re-enter either the Paris Accord or in really entirely new transaction on terms that are fair to the United States, its businesses, its workers, its people, its taxpayers. So we're getting out, but we will start to negotiate, and we will see if we can make a deal that's fair.
The international community condemned the much-expected decision of Trump. The United Nations said it was a major disappointment. It felt the move of the world's second-largest greenhouse gas emitter could lead to rise in global temperature.
Climate change is undeniable, and it is one of the biggest threats to our present world, to the future of our planet. And on the other hand, climate action is unstoppable. And I urge all the governments around the world to stay the course, to remain committed to the implementation of the Paris Agreement to the benefit of all of us.
Leaders the world over also expressed disappointment over the US's decision, saying it will be an abdication of US leadership on a key global challenge. The decision also drew condemnation from people across the US.
Today, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, announced his decision to withdraw the United States from the Paris Agreement. I do respect this decision, but I do think it is an actual mistake, both for the US and for our planet.
His announcement today, from our point of view, is disappointing, but not at all surprising. It was entirely as expected and as predicted and as promised by him.
It's a little frightening, it's scary. I have really young family members, nephews. I plan on having kids myself, and the repercussions for the future generations is really frightening.
But despite a big blow to the Paris climate deal, many countries have pledged their commitment to the fight against global warming. Greenpeace organization said there was still hope in the fight against climate change.
It's going to be more difficult without the U.S. However, if you look at that, the rest of the world is responsible for 85% of the global emissions, and you see that other countries are willing to remain committed to the Paris Agreement, and in fact are stepping up their climate ambitions. I think that's a very hopeful message.
Our government is committed, irrespective of the stand of anyone, anywhere in the world. It has been the stand of Mr. Narendra Modi ji. He provided leadership at the Paris summit, and we are committed to ensure that we will do our best to address the issues related to climate change.
The Chinese government is highly concerned about the issue of climate change. We have taken practical measures and adopted an active attitude in response to climate change.
Canada is deeply disappointed with the U.S. position. The Paris Agreement is a good deal for Canada, and it's a good deal for the world. It will create good jobs. The clean growth economy is where the world is going, and Canada is going to be part of it.
There will be no penalty on the US for leaving, as the Paris deal is based upon the premise of voluntary emissions reductions by participating countries. However, stepping out of its provisions will be a lengthy process that could take up to 4 years. While Trump said he was ready to renegotiate the deal, the European leaders said the US could not unilaterally do so.
The Paris Agreement is fit for purpose. The Paris Agreement is here to stay. And the 29 articles of the Paris Agreement, of this Paris Agreement, are not to be renegotiated. They are to be implemented. And that's what the European Union will do.
The Paris Agreement of 2015 commits the US and 194 other countries to keeping rise in global temperatures well below 2 degrees Celsius. Only Syria and Nicaragua have not signed the deal. The US contributes about 15% of global emissions of carbon, but it is also a significant source of finance and technology for developing countries in their efforts to fight rising temperatures. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Meanwhile, tensions in the Korean peninsula rose again as North Korea test-fired a missile into Japanese waters on Monday. Both South Korea and Japan strongly condemned the latest test, which was yet again in defiance of UN sanctions. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has vowed action along with the other nations to deter Pyongyang's repeated provocations.
North Korea once again provoked its neighbors and the international community as it test-fired a Scud-class missile into Japanese waters on Monday. It was the North's third ballistic missile test in as many weeks and the 12th this year. US military monitors said the short-range missile flew for 6 minutes, while Japan said it fell into the country's exclusive economic zone waters. Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe strongly condemned the latest test and said his country will join the United States in taking concrete action against Pyongyang.
As we agreed at the recent G7 summit, the North Korean problem is a top priority for the international community. In order to restrain North Korea, we will take specific action together with the United States.
It was the second time this year that a North Korean missile fell close to Japan. The latest test, carried out in defiance of UN sanctions warnings and possible US military action, has once again heightened tensions in the Korean peninsula. On Sunday, North Korea had tested a new anti-aircraft weapon supervised by leader Kim Jong-un.
This launch was extremely dangerous and a clear infringement of the UN Security Council resolution. We absolutely cannot allow these provocations by North Korea and protest North Korea in the strongest words possible.
South Korea too condemned the test as a grave threat and said it was seeing the recent string of missile launches as a direct challenge to the new leadership in the country.
North Korea's missile launch is seen as an attempt to apply pressure on South Korea to change policy against North.
The recent series of missile launches and Pyongyang's threat to stage its 6th nuclear test have prompted calls for tougher UN sanctions and a warning from Donald Trump. The US president had said last week at the G7 summit that North Korea was a big problem, promising to resolve it. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, much else has transpired around the world this week. Here's a roundup of the other international news in our segment, Globe Watch.
Widespread flooding and mudslides in Sri Lanka affected over 6 lakh people across the country. Victims are now forced to live in shelters offered by the government. Besides offering food and shelter, the government is also providing psychological counseling to those who tragically suffered the loss of their loved ones. Over 200 people were killed in the flooding in the country. At least 36 people were killed after an attack by a gunman who fired shots from an assault rifle and set fire to gambling tables in a popular hotel casino in Philippines' capital, Manila. The attack took place in the early hours of Friday morning.
Most of the victims died from inhaling smoke. Of those killed, 22 were resort guests and 13 were staff. 54 people were injured. The gunman later killed himself in one of the hotel rooms. The nation asked the country's Supreme Court to reinstate its controversial travel ban on people from majority Muslim countries. In its filing, the administration asked the top court to overturn rulings of the lower courts in Hawaii and Maryland. It also asked the court to grant emergency requests that would see the travel ban reinstated immediately. It has already been blocked by lower courts that have called it discriminatory.
Well, let's now shift focus and bring you up to speed with all the sports news you might have missed this week in sports action. Golden State Warriors began their NBA Finals rematch against defending champions Cleveland Cavaliers with a comfortable 113-91 win. Kevin Durant scored 38 points and Stephen Curry added 6 three-pointers. The Golden State Warriors led 60-52 after the first two quarters and went on a 10-0 run at the start of the second half en route to victory. The Cavaliers had 20 turnovers, a joint NBA record for a playoff or finals game. The Warriors committed just 4, level with the record for the fewest in a finals game. Manchester United have moved clear of Real Madrid to be rated as Europe's most valuable club by professional services firm KPMG. In a report which looked at the finances of 39 clubs based on their popularity on social media channels, revenues for the 2014-15 and 2015-16 seasons and success in European competitions, United have been valued at €3 billion, ahead of both Real Madrid at 2.89 billion and Barcelona at 2.68 billion. Bayern Munich remain in 4th place while Manchester City edge past Arsenal to take 5th spot, both with enterprise values of just under €1.7 billion. Arsenal manager Arsene Wenger has signed a new 2-year contract extension that will keep him at the Emirates Stadium club until at least 2019. The new deal for Wenger, who has spent over 20 years at the club, came despite numerous protests against his managing skills from disgruntled fans. Jubilant with the contract extension, the French manager said that he is really fond of this club and that he is now looking forward to add many more titles with the club in the future. Well, never before seen drone footage shows Cuvier's beaked whales, a mother and calf, and 3 more individuals of these rare and elusive animals swimming near Guadalupe Island off the coast of Mexico. The magical drone footage was captured during a 2-week expedition by scientists on board Sea Shepherd Conservation Society's research vessel, the RV Martin Sheen. I'm going to leave you with these visuals from the Pacific Ocean. Until next time, this is Frank Pereira signing off.